Hey, friends, welcome back to the Do Cool Shit podcast. Today's episode is a little bit different and it's very special to me because I'm joined by someone who's been on the show before, and it's someone who has helped shape how I see the world, how I show up in the world, and it's my mom. And we've talked about her coming on the show again, and we're making it happen. And I think we're gonna, maybe depending on how this one goes, make it a regular thing.
Katie chats with
We'll have
Mama.
to we'll have to come up with a special name for these episodes. But
Uh,
yeah,
We could
so
call
she's
we could call it "Dump Your Brain and Sort It Out."
oh, I like it. I like it. Yeah, so she is a psychotherapist. If you didn't catch her first episode, it's worth a revisit or a visit for the first time. But today, we're gonna get into something that, dare I say, every single person experiences, but not everyone knows how to navigate. And we're gonna talk about a couple topics and kind of, Mom, you said the word dance, which I really liked, like the dance between them of perspective and grief and capacity and expectations, and how these things influence decisions, behaviors, stress, and people's ability to follow through, especially during challenging seasons or phases or times in life. And a topic that I keep revisiting over and over and over again is the the gap between knowing and doing. And often in these times, people know what to do for their health or what would go into caring for themselves, and they also struggle to show up in those ways. I had a conversation with someone this morning about that. So this is going to be a mix of conversation and maybe some reflection and tools that you can actually use. So, if you're listening and you're in a tough season right now, this will be helpful. Or maybe you just want to better understand yourself, better understand others, or bookmark this for the future, then yeah, welcome, Mom, Marcia.
Marsha. Thank you. I'm interested to see what we'll sort of peel back today because we don't have much of an agenda, just a little bit of a framework.
No, I kind of really like doing things in that way. I don't like
Yeah.
to uh over plan. It makes my brain more chaotic.
Well, like it's interesting too because as a therapist and as a coach, I mean, I think there's a Venn diagram between coaching and therapizing, but they're also distinct from each other. But one of the things is being able to read the room, and read the individual. And so you always want to have some general structural goals, where the person is wanting to go or where you think they need to go. But on any given day, your approach is going to be different, right? On any given day, you might need to be tougher. You might need to be more compassionate, softer. I think you can be tough and compassionate at the same time, but, you might need to lead more. You might need to listen more as the clinician. I think the places where coaching and therapy fall short is when the expert in the room is taking way too much leadership as if they're the only ones who know what the path could be.
Mm,
I had a trainer once who said that it's not about teaching someone new stuff. I mean, it might be a little bit technique wise in coaching, but it's not about teaching as much as it is about awakening what's already inside them. And they already sort of know, they just may not know that they know.
mhm.
So that's sort of on the therapy end of things. But as you were talking about what we might talk about, the word that hit my brain was patience, learning patience.
Mm,
And the other thing that when you said if people are sort of in a tough place or, want to learn some tools or whatever, maybe know what to do, but don't know sort of how to get there. I think about the conversation that you and I have had in the past about discipline and motivation. Are you on team discipline or team motivation? And I don't think it's necessarily either of those things when you're in that lost place or foggy place.
Yeah, I've been having there's a very common theme in the conversations I've been having, the emails I've been writing, and even at the last podcast I did too, is how discipline for a lot of the people that I talk to, they think that's their quote unquote problem and they need to just be more disciplined or they just need to do it.
For them.
And right. And it's like I look at all these people that are saying this to me and I'm like, you don't have a discipline problem. And there's usually other areas in their life where, like they're very, very disciplined. There's just in this specific area, there's a gap, and discipline is not the thing that's going to fill that gap. It will be a tool that they use once they can figure out how to fill the gap, discipline, motivation. There are ways to use those, and they are just tools, and they're not the only tool and not the best tool sometimes.
So when someone says, "I know what to do, I just need to buckle down," what's your response to them typically?
Well, and this is like the whole last episode I did was on intention behavior gap. I've been having conversations with people a lot about these and digging into the reasons why,
Mhm.
like what their intention is and what's actually happening. What is going on in between there? What is
Mhm.
actually the gap? Sometimes it's lack of knowledge, sometimes it's a mindset aspect or emotional or cognitive barrier. Sometimes I would say oftentimes for people, it's lack of clarity or direction with like how and when. And a lot of the people that I talk to, it's I'll figure it out. Like they are problem solvers and they're solution oriented and they do a lot of things and they do a lot of things well. And then they're like, well, I'll just do these things.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
when you're in it, like when you're in that chaotic spot and you're also juggling a whole bunch of other things, following through on, like, "Hey, I'm just gonna take care of myself." And it's like, "Yeah, but, how exactly are you going to do that?"
That's where I think expectation meets expectation. Like, the expectation is, "I'll just figure it out. I always figure things out. I'm a problem solver," versus the expectation of wanting to do the thing or wanting to achieve the goal or wanting to meet a certain standard that you've set for yourself. So these expectations, do they merge together well? Not always. And then what happens when they don't? Self esteem falls, self judgment rises, and you can get into this pattern of maybe my expectation about my capacity isn't accurate. Maybe I'm not as good as, you know, I thought I was, and then as the focus increases on the negative, the sense of self capacity diminishes. So expectations, I think, is really important piece of this.
Mhm. So, is that one of the first things that you would suggest someone do if they're in a situation like this, is examining what their expectations
Yeah.
actually are?
Yeah. I mean, I think probably you and I do a very similar thing here, which is like, what would you be doing? What would it look like if you were feeling successful about X? You
Uh-huh.
know, what, you know, f- 5 weeks from now, or whatever time period you choose from now, next year, what would it look like that you would be feeling you achieved something or feeling like I did well on that? What would that be looking like? And it might be you might be able to bring it down to smaller nuggets, which are more achievable.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't just say, "What are your goals?"
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just too vague. But what might you be feeling? What might you be doing if in X period of time that you would consider reaching some goals or being successful?
Yeah, I like that, and I do that with a lot of people. And then I have a different example. There's actually maybe a really good example that kind of interweaves a lot of these things. I had a conversation with a client of mine last week. She had messaged me and it kind of sent these like little red flags up in the air
Yeah,
for me.
yeah,
And because she has, well, let me go over the message first. So she messaged me and she said, "Hey, I think I'm ready to do this by myself." She's a training client of mine right now. We've worked on nutrition before very, very, very successfully. She's crushing it in those areas. Nutrition and just caring for herself, like her foundation is very solid there. Training is a little bit of a different story right now, and she's working on training with some big health goals associated with it, including increasing bone density. But she was like, "Hey, I think I'm ready to do this by myself. So I've learned a lot from you and thank you so much." And that was the message. And I was like, "Hey, you know, validated her because she has freaking crushed it in the year and a half we've been together. And there's a lot of things she's doing really, really, really well." And then kind of called out, like, "Hey, with training here, though, because the past few weeks, what I also knew behind the scenes is she had been sick. She had some family stuff going on where her capacity was way more full. And she hadn't been training regularly for the past almost month. And so, hey, I feel like I'm ready to go do this by myself. I'm like, that doesn't necessarily match what's going on. And so I basically had asked her if I said, "This happens for people a lot of the time, and I see this where they may be doing this as kind of like an avoidance, a running away, a self protection, because there is maybe misaligned expectations going on right now," which was one of the big things we dug into. And so I asked her, just being really honest with herself, if this was something she truly felt like, "Hey, I can go do this on my own at this point right now, or is this me kind of protecting myself from being uncomfortable?" And she was like, "No, if I'm being really honest, you're right." And so expectations were one of the first things we dug into. And I had asked her, like, "Hey, well, what are your expectations of yourself right now when it comes to your training specifically?" And she said, "Well, I'm expecting that I'm going to show up like I did 20 years ago. And I'm expecting to feel energetic every single time I show up. And I'm expecting that I'm going to feel like I want to do it every single time."
Yeah, but is that expectation or is that wishful thinking? I mean,
Well,
was that really expectation for her, or was it wishful thinking and couched as expectation?
yeah, I mean, that's a good perspective on it.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
think about it that way. Yeah. I mean, and we were like dug
So,
in.
so what'd you say to her?
Well,
I mean, obviously, that's not realistic.
right. So we dug into that. And we dug into her reasons again of why strength training is important. We also dug into her capacity of like, "Hey, where you're at right now, maybe you're expecting yourself to be able to like show up and do the damn thing for 45 minutes, however many times a week. And that's just not realistic or possible for
Bingo.
you at this time." And that was also part of what her thoughts were too.
Can I just insert one other thought there? I think one of the other things when you talked about, uh, her wanting to step away, I think one of the other things, and this happens a lot in therapy, is being afraid of disappointing you, the clinician.
That was a
You
big
know,
thing she said.
if I can do this on my own because I don't want to really front up to the fact that I'm not crushing it in the gym. I'm not crushing it in the training. I may have crushed the other stuff, and I want you to be proud of me.
Yeah.
So if I sidestep this piece you and sort of hide it from you, I can avoid feeling that shame or
Mhm.
feel like I'm disappointing you because they don't want to
Mhm.
disappoint us.
Of course not. Yeah. Thank you for saying that because I that had slipped my mind. That was a big thing she said. She said, "I don't wanna feel like I'm wasting your time." And I'm like, that would it for me, that thought never, ever crossed my mind,
Mhm.
and I get it. Like, I get that thought for sure. So, we squashed that pretty
Good.
immediately.
I have clients say to me all the time, I don't know, I come here every 2 weeks or whatever the interval is, and I just say the same things like, like, "How do you handle me saying the same things all the time?" And I say, "Every single time you come, the topic may be very similar, the stressor, the issue may be the same, but you're approaching it differently each
Mhm.
time, and each time you're a little more open to other possibilities. So it's not the same rerun of the show every single time, but to them, it feels like that.
Mm.
And they feel like, "Oh, I'm boring you, or I'm disappointing you, or you think I'm not working hard enough." And then, of course, if I'm being honest, the clinician goes, "Am I doing the best job I could?" If they're feeling like they wanna leave, you have to look at your own sense of expectations about yourself, and that's where you fall into the imposter syndrome and all that sort of stuff too,
Oh, yeah.
trusting yourself.
Mhm. That's huge, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So with this client too, because again, there was so much interwoven there's a dance here. So we had discussed expectations, wishful thinking type of aspect and what her capacity is. We also I'll go over this in a bit, but like created some kind of alternative options for her to go to versus just this one standard that she had set for herself. But her perspective was also big because I had reminded her, like, of, these are important things for you right now, right? Strength training, like, she wants to be around and have longevity and play with her grandkids, and she wants to do this big hike for her next big birthday, and, like, all of these things that strength training will help her in
She doesn't
being
wanna fall and break her hip and be part of that statistic.
right. So her perspective, because she had mentioned to me, if I'm being honest, this feels like just one more thing to do right now. And one, I totally get that.
And it is. That's the truth.
It is. And the other side of it is, it is one more thing to do. And is it inconvenient? Maybe sometimes. But like when you look at it a little bit differently and you have some different kind of strategies to go at it and know that if you go into it purposefully, no matter what it looks like, then it's something because she said, every single time I do it, I feel really, really good. You and I had this
Mhm.
conversation recently, right? Like, I don't feel like going to the gym. I don't feel like doing this workout. I
Right.
really don't want to.
And I know I'm going to, and I also know I'm gonna be glad I did. It's all
Right.
those steps. Right.
All of those steps. So having the backups where perspective wise, again, it's like it is one more thing and it's worth it to
Mhm.
me
Mhm.
do because of these things. And then having those extra steps where we made some agreements on, like, hey, if you don't feel like doing it, then you're going to start and you're going to commit to 5 minutes. And if at that 5 minute mark you feel worse, okay, you're going to stop it at the 10-minute mark because 10 minutes is your minimum of the workout, and if it feels worse at 5 minutes, you only got 5 more minutes to do, and then you can stop.
Mhm.
But if you feel the same or a little bit better, you're gonna keep going. And she's like, "Yes, I can totally, totally, totally do that." And then the 10-minute again was like, "Okay, so you have 10 minutes. that is what you're committed to is 10 minutes. So if you feel like you're crushed for time, or you have other things to do or whatnot, or it's like she does it early in the morning. Well, it's like I'm tired and blah, blah, blah. Just 10 minutes. That's all I have
Mhm,
to do. 10 minutes purposefully, and that compounds.
mhm,
And it builds, like you said, that self-trust. It builds your capacity. It builds the aspects that help make it a little bit easier to do in the
mhm,
future.
mhm, mhm. So it operates on both a body level where you're building stamina, and it operates on a cognitive level or a neurological level where you're saying, to use your language, I'm doing and succeeding at something hard. I'm doing hard things, like you say. So, on both levels, which are, of course, connected, you're actually achieving and succeeding. And then I always say to my clients, then congratulate yourself at the end. Close the loop. I did it. Like a little kid. I did it.
Yes. I think that that is a big step that most people don't do, and it matters, and Lauren Burke and I had this conversation
Love
recently.
her. I love her.
She's the best, isn't she?
She's awesome. She just, I've never met her, but she always makes me feel good.
I think
And
you
she's
have
not
met
even
her last
talking
year.
to me
Yeah.
per directly, but I always feel good just in being in her presence. So, Lauren, I really like you.
Yeah, shout out to you, Lauren. But she created this thing, and it was for a different modality, but I use it in a little slightly different way, where she has this "fuck yeah, go me" mantra, or "heck yeah, go me" if you don't wanna say my favorite word. Um, and how I started using it is for myself and telling my clients when they do these small things that at some point, what Lauren and I talked about is at some point in our lives, like, up until a certain point, we were cheered for to do all these things, right? Taking a first step, eating a meal, like all of these little things that we were cheered for. And then at some point, it switched over to like, yeah, you're supposed to do these things, so you just do them, right?
Expectations.
Yeah, and then yeah, so just like expected, I should just do these things, and if I don't, then it's almost this negative
Mhm.
thing. So
Mhm.
we stop congratulating ourselves for it or recognizing ourselves for doing these things, and it's just like, well, this is just what I'm supposed to do.
Mhm.
D- I don't think we need like this huge celebration of like, I did the thing. It's like just, hey, yes, I'm proud of
Yeah.
myself. Very, very quietly, to yourself, if you work with a coach, like, I'm like, hell yeah, heck yeah, go you, let's
Mhm.
do it
Mhm.
again. Let's figure out how you did it, what made it happen. It made you feel really freaking good. Let's do it again. But part of you doing it again is that reward. And the reward doesn't have to be food or buying yourself something or whatever. The reward can be as little as you just being proud of your taking a
I did
second
it.
to be
Right.
proud of
Right.
yourself. I
I
did
did
that damn
something I
thing.
didn't want to do, and I feel good about having accomplished that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I just had another thought pop into my head, which is which goes along with, see, here's the dance. It goes along with expectations is if you don't do whatever, if she says I can do this on my own and I'm gonna I'll get back to you later, or I don't go to the gym when I know I should, all of those things. Who are you disappointing? Are you disappointing me? Are you disappointing yourself? Are you disappointing someone in your history? Whose voice is inside your head saying that you're a failure or a disappointment? And it might be more on the therapy end than the coaching end. It might be like, a very judgmental parent, or a castigating grandparent or teacher or religion, or, it could be all sorts of things from the past, which maybe you in your coaching realm want to tackle, or maybe you just want to identify it and suggests that they work on that elsewhere, you know?
Mhm.
I'm sure you have some people who are both in therapy and coaching with you, in
Oh,
therapy with
yeah.
someone else and coaching with you, and you can say, that's something for you to really spend some time on with your therapist.
Yeah, for sure. I
I
love
think
when
just
people are in both.
yeah, it's definitely more, miles per gallon for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think disappointment and fear of disappointing really feeds into that whole realistic and unrealistic expectations of oneself. And maybe even expectations of someone else, maybe expectations of you as the coach, or maybe expectations of their partner or their kid or their parent, like that maybe needs to be peeled back a little bit and looked at, what's realistic. I love when you're talking about, just commit to 10 minutes. So,
So where when you're talking about these things and the expectations and the disappointment and all of these things that can really skew people kind of from the path, I see this as like what goes into their stress levels at that point, where their nervous system is at, their state, and then what behaviors are affected
say
because of
more,
things.
say more.
So this, I guess what I'm kind of getting at is like where people are like, well, I know these things, but if they're in an upregulated state, if they're in a stressed state and their, nervous system is in self protection mode, and that turns into self sabotage for a common term for people very, very often. So it can highly affect behaviors. And there's a lot of reactivity. Sorry, let me backtrack. It highly impacts decisions and behaviors. And this is an area that can get really, really confusing for people.
I think what you're trying to say is how do you get, how do you lead someone to go deeper? Is
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
fair?
Yeah.
Like you talk about why, why, keep drilling down into the whys. Or maybe it's what. I call it scratching the surface. And like go beyond scratching the surface. Let's dig down a little bit more. And a lot of times people say, I don't know. I don't know.
Mhm.
And then you just say, well, just sit with it for a minute. We can be quiet for a moment. Just sit for a minute. What do you feel? And even if they can't put a scenario to the feeling has valuable information and is valid place to explore. Like I'm just feeling really antsy. Okay, where are you feeling antsy? I'm feeling antsy like around my diaphragm. Okay, well, what do you want to do about that? Do you want to sit with it and see if you get more information, or do you want to do some breathing and make it go away? Like make it more diffuse. What do you want to do? Which gives someone a sense of self advocacy.
Now, in that area, the thought that came to mind for me is like, well, what do you want to do? And a lot of times, the surface level is, well, I wanna.
Run away. I want to make it stop.
Right. And again, that may be like, well, I wanna go, for a lot of people I work with, it's like, well, I wanna go eat 85 M&Ms right
Hmm.
now.
Sounds great. Yeah. Okay. Well, um, yeah. Well, I know you do this stuff. Like, what will that soothe you? How will that make you feel more equipped? Does it make you feel more equipped? And if so, how? Why? Like again, it's exploring and examining. It's not necessarily coming up with the answer.
Mhm.
Because going back to what I said in the beginning, maybe people already do know the answer. It's just hidden behind so much other stuff. So maybe you just need to help them awaken that knowledge and awareness in themselves. You know, like I know 85 grams would taste great, but I know I'm going to feel like shit afterwards. Okay, well, there's your choice. And if you do it, and you eat the 85 M&Ms and you feel like shit afterwards, what's your next set of feelings going to be, right? Shame, self-loathing because I caved, et cetera, et cetera. Then you've got, okay, well, you can follow that path. And I know you do this because I've talked with you about how you do what you do, So, and what that brings me to is the clinician, the you or the me, managing our own expectations and being patient also, because I think patience is such an important piece of this whole tapestry. There's that word again, that whole tapestry of interwoven experiences, you know, expectations, self judgment, self sabotage. Most of that stuff doesn't happen if you can begin to develop more patience and therefore more resilience and therefore more adaptability to various environments and various situations.
Mhm. Yeah. The patience, the slowing down, that's the hard part. Again, especially when someone is in it, if you're listening to this, it's like when you're in it, you're moving fast. Your body is like, oh, like I can sense it just thinking about situations. So the last thing you want to do is slow down. And the best thing you can do for yourself is slow down. And if you feel like you don't have time to do that, it's actually going
That's
to sit with
exactly when you
you.
need to do it
Exactly
the most.
when to do it.
Right.
Because that is one, just going to help you regulate your state so you can actually be in a position to tune into yourself and make more intentional choices. And the all of these things that we're talking about, like, they're separate things. Perspective is separate than capacity, is separate than expectations, is separate than grief, which we haven't even like really talked about a lot, but that's a topic that's coming up in various ways with a lot of people I've been working with lately. And we said dance because they all work together, they're interwoven. And when people can slow down, then they can do a better job examining or getting curious, is what I like to say. You said scratching the surface.
Mhm.
And, when one thing shifts, then there's kind of like this recalibration of those other aspects that
Yeah.
happen.
It's like a mobile, separate entities, but, you know, you touch one part of the mobile and the whole thing is going to shift.
Mhm. And I mean, this is like, I know it can sound pretty overwhelming, and I know I talk to some people and it's like, "Wait, like, I have to do this work forever?"
Mhm.
And it's like, well, as you said kind of earlier, where it's like, I feel like I'm coming to the session with the same story over and over and over again. It's like, I think the cool thing and a different perspective of this is when there's these different tools that you have in your toolbox, that you can know when to pull one out, what's going to be best, or which ones you're going to use together. And you are a human being and you live like nobody's living Groundhog's Day. So, every single day is different, even if the day is set up in the same structure and life is going to life. There's going to be a
Mhm.
lot of things that happen that are, I think that if we all had a perfect plan and it went accordingly, none of this would be a thing, but that's not reality
Right.
for human
Right.
beings. So, having the tools and skill sets to be able to, and the experience, I will say, to be able to manage when there's uncertainty, when there's grief present, when there's feelings.
Well, that it's a very good segue into grief, and I hope we go there a little bit, but my whole thing about response versus reaction. That's exactly what you're talking about,
Mhm.
you know? The going to the 85 M's, peanut M&Ms,
Obviously.
that that that's a reaction. A response is a considered decision making. And you might still decide to go for the M&Ms, but maybe you'll decide to go for 5.
Mhm.
So I think response and reaction is a really important thing to develop awareness of and to begin to build and strengthen the response part and to begin to listen to and hear and understand the reaction part more.
Yeah.
And let's dip into grief a little bit because I think grief has, and I'm interested to hear, like where this is coming to you. You're saying you're sort of dealing with a lot of people dealing with different levels of grief. And I think it butts up against expectation, patience, all of the things that we were talking about. So, I'm interested to hear, like, in your experience clinically, what are people grieving?
There's I have a
And
couple
maybe
of people.
maybe they don't even use the word grief.
No, a lot of people don't, and it's something that I recognize that is present, and I think the interesting thing about grief and what I always tell people is, like, there's no handbook to grief, and grief is so many things, and it doesn't have, like, a course necessarily, uh, and it doesn't have a timeline. So, um conversations like I often have around grief is like there's a couple people that I work with right now who they have had deaths in their family or they have family members or friends who are very sick.
Mhm.
And there is a lot of different types of grief that are involved in that. I have one client whose kiddo is going off to college. They're graduating high school soon and going off to college. It's their only kid, and there's a lot of grief that is involved in that. I
Mhm.
have people who they're having a kid or adding a kid into their family, and there's various aspects of grief when it comes to their identity or their sense of self or the time or the relationship that they have with their partner.
And the
Is
relationship they have with their first kid that is now gonna be
Yeah,
the elder kid, the older brother or sister.
that's a really good point. Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people talk about that. That's a really good point. So those aspects, and then I think there's also a conversation I've had a lot with people, excuse me, is when they go into aspects of change, there's also a grief of the, like, past version of them as well.
Changing chapters, the next chapter, whatever that might be, whether it's loss or gain, or it has something to do with moving away from what you've become accustomed to, or what has become your norm, or what you've been reveling in, or what you enjoy, or the transition to something new, which of course is going to create a stress reaction.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
and
that's where
like,
you're
I think you said this maybe to me separately earlier, it was, like, the anticipatory
Mhm.
grief, and it can create a big friction point.
For sure, because you're loading your brain to be anticipating something uncomfortable or dire or unbearable or whatever the case may be. And in- the knowledge that grief is more acute. Let's just take death, for example. That's a universally understood grief. We know that the grief is going to be more acute in the beginning, and we trust and we know and we've heard that it will mitigate over time, it'll moderate over time. We may not feel that in the moment, may not believe that when we're in the acute stage, when we may feel like, I'm never going to be the same. Truth is, you're never going to be the same. That is the truth. But that doesn't mean you're never going to survive, right? When someone dies, a part of you goes. When you break up in a relationship, a part of you is missing. When your child goes off to school and you suddenly realize this child may never live at my house again. Like they're not just going off to school and my house is going to sound different and feel different and look different. And oh my God, they may never come back and live here. That's a piece of you being taken from you. And that's very painful. That's grief. And, yeah, in the old days, everybody said, well, there are these 5 stages of grief, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and I'm in this stage and I'm in this stage. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, as brilliant as she was, that's one aspect of grief. There's so much more knowledge that we have now and the different forms and shapes and feelings that inhabit grief. So, um, I think a lot of this is expectation of ourself, expectation of what the situation's gonna present us with, expectation of how we're gonna handle it, and then patience, and then will we be able to adapt? I'm never gonna be able to adapt to that. That's anticipatory anxiety, and it's anticipatory grief and anticipatory failure. I don't think I'm ever gonna recover from this, and people do.
Mhm.
We do. Most of us. But it's again that trust and being patient with the process of it. And that's hard.
Mhm.
And then people expect they have to do it alone as opposed to, maybe having a therapist, maybe talking with, someone else about it, maybe having a coach to get them back in the gym so they can begin to build capacity again, both physically and emotionally.
Mhm.
There's so many ways you could it's like a crystal. I mean, there are so many facets to it that you could look at it from.
Yeah. Yeah. The capacity piece, I guess, is the first place I'll go off of with this, is that when grief is present, it seems like it takes a really big piece of capacity. And I won't say that it's not doing that. It certainly does. And how I've gone about this with people is reminding them that prioritizing themselves and the things that support their well-being. Now, things a lot of the time very likely have to change when it comes to expectations or like what they're actually focusing on, like if your capacity is more full, like hitting your macros spot on for the day and getting this really hard workout in, like maybe that's not what's going to help you in building your capacity. Well, what is? So, thinking about in these times when capacity feels more full, a lot of the time what I run across with people is that their thoughts in gaining more capacity is, well, I'm just going to remove the things that feel like that quote unquote one more thing that feel like they're taking up my time and energy and resources. And that's stuff like going to the grocery store and making themselves a meal and thinking about what's going to be for dinner or going to the gym or going for a walk. And one, totally get it. Totally get it. And also two, you're taking away the things that actually help you build your capacity. You're taking away the things that help you regulate and manage stress levels in stressful times. You're taking away the things that you can be a little bit more certain with or have a little bit more control of in situations or times where there may be a lot of uncertainty or lack of control present as well.
So there's capacity and there's capacity. I mean, like you buy a gallon of water or a gallon of milk. That vessel has a certain capacity, right? Humans have a little bit more elasticity, although sometimes we may not feel that way. Like the only way you can add a cup of milk to the gallon of milk that you bought is to take a cup out, right? It is not an elastic vessel. Humans, sometimes we feel like that and we feel like I can't take one more thing, so I have to get rid of something, like I'm gonna
Offload.
not do the training. as opposed to thinking about swapping out some things
Mhm.
or taking a moment to say, wait a minute, maybe I've got more elasticity. Maybe I've got more flex than I'm giving myself credit for. And that's the other definition of capacity. It's not just what I can hold, it's also what I can build.
Right.
And that I was talking about the second one and you sort of went to the first ones. I feel like building capacity maybe means being more adaptable or getting more elastic, less rigid, more fluid.
Yeah, well, how I talk about it, I mean, when I refer to capacity, I mean the second one too. How humans often think about their capacity is like the first one. So
Mhm.
it's I
Mhm.
think there's a big piece in there, which is reminding yourself that you're not a jug of milk or
Right.
water.
Right. Right. You
So,
may feel like you're
yeah,
overloading and you might be overloading, but how do you unload?
right. Right.
Right?
And yes, it may be taking some things away and like really looking at, hey, what are my priorities today? And remembering that priorities in there, like what I tell people is you better be on that priority list because that is if you take yourself off, then you're taking away a lot of that capacity. So,
Right.
things may shift in how you are prioritizing yourself and
And
also
trusting
have
yourself
and trusting.
and trusting yourself, right?
Yes. Huge. Huge,
And
huge, huge.
trusting your capacity and
That
trusting your flex.
yeah, I'll give an example I think would
Yay.
be good about the conversation I had this morning. What was I gonna say? But
Building
yes,
capa-
I mean, that's huge. That's
Mhm.
huge. You may have to shift and that's okay, but have some clarity in what that actually looks like. So the conversation I had with one of my clients this morning was one of her parents is sick, has late stage cancer, had to go to the emergency room this morning. And like, that's a super shitty situation, right? And it's
Terrible.
very, very scary, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of capacity being taken up. And I like thanked her for because she has had thanked me for being there to support her and help her. And I said, well, thank you for sharing so that we can do that. So again, speaking about these things, because a lot of people are like, I'll just figure it out. What her initial thoughts were in here was, well, okay, so I'm going to have to shift what prioritizing myself looks like. And she said, I'm going to lean into my bare minimums, which is something I discuss with people to have, a lot of the time people look at this as like a floor and a ceiling, or like, these are the things that I would like to do. And these are the things that I can do. So having bare minimums. And she said, I'm going to shift into my bare minimums and then continue to say from there, I'm going to eat when I need to eat. I'm going to drink water and I'm going to go for walks. And then said, I know that I need to care for myself because that's how I can be strong for my family here. And like so many amazing great things in there.
And one of the things that she prioritized for self-care was not canceling the meeting with you.
It was a message, but yes. Like one that is huge. Yeah, one of the things
Okay.
she was caring for herself was like, "Hey, I'm going to."
Connecting with you.
For sure. Yes.
Yeah. And, in with her or someone else, it might be not canceling a meeting with you, a
Yes.
session with you, you know,
Yes.
making time for self-care by continuing that place and connection where she or he can focus on themselves better.
Yep. Absolutely. So, what I went to from there, because this is where I see a gap in a lot of people, is I said, and I say this from love and compassion, is bare minimums are absolutely something to lean into. And those don't give you any clarity and direction. And in a place where there's a lot of going on, your brain needs clarity and direction in order for you to actually be able to follow through. Because something that you had said was that loss of self-trust very often happens when people don't follow through with what their intentions are.
Yeah. And
And
again, they feel disappointed in themselves for not following through. And then they feel shitty about themselves. And then.
right. So, a very simple thing that people can do in this situation so they can actually follow through is create more clarity and direction. So,
What's
I
the
said I
first
love
what's the first step in doing that?
yeah, so like giving yourself like actual things. So for her there, I'll say like I loved all of those. Those are really great direction. You know that those are things that support you. So when you say eat when I need to eat, like, well, what does that actually mean? And when you say drink water, what does that actually mean? Like we have to get more specific. And she had come back and she said, "I don't know, I can't think right now," and then said, "I'm gonna drink 3 bottles of water, I'm gonna go for a walk whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I'm gonna eat protein and a fruit or vegetable when I go to eat." It's like, this is a next step in specificity
Mhm,
here. Also, you
mhm,
are thinking, you can do it
mhm,
right now.
mhm.
And reminders to anybody, but reminders I gave to her in this situation was you thinking about this and you taking that little bit of like slow down, connect with yourself here and create specificity actually allows you one to follow through, like we said, create the self-trust, build the capacity, all of these other it also allows you to be strong and be more present for your family. When you c she said, "I know I need to care for myself because it allows me to do these things." Great. So let's, do that. And reminders because I could sense, because I've been there and I've heard this is like you're in the hospital and you wanna be there. So reminders is like you have your phone. You can go for a walk down the hall or wherever you're gonna go. You're not going to be that far. And if you're needed, someone can call you and you'll go right back. So, reminding yourself like it's safe to do these things. Uh when when I need to eat is likely too late. So, that's setting yourself for behaviors that are gonna be probably not feel great. Probably eating
Right.
85 times, right? So taking, put some time into your schedule that allow you to actually be more present because you have care of yourself and you've eaten some protein, a piece of fruit, something like that. When you are going for that walk down the hall, take a deep breath, connect with yourself, ask yourself how you're feeling. These are ways that you prioritize yourself in small ways. Manage your stress level. She said that too. I'm going to manage my stress levels. Well, how are you going to do that? So,
Right.
getting very specific and again, reminding yourself because when you're in it, your intention may be, I need to care for myself. And like, these are the basic things I need
Mhm.
to do that. And also, you're not giving yourself space, direction, etc., to follow through, which then leads to all the other
So
things.
so here when I said to you a few minutes ago, I said, "What's the first step?"
Mhm.
Your answer evolved into slow down, be more specific. The first step is stop.
Yes.
That's
Thank
the
you.
very first step is stop. And, I don't know if you remember this or not, but when you were very little and I first learned about the Southern Poverty Law Center and the teaching tolerance program that had these amazing full colorful posters in the hallways of your elementary school, and they said up, step back, start over. Do you remember those things? Stop, step back, start over. I love that. That is such a tool for me. It's been such a tool with my clients. And in this case that we're talking about right now, part of the start over is stop, step back. Start over means how am I going to do this? When am I going to know that I need to eat? When am I going to know that like, how can I get more specific? That's part of the start over. The specificity is part of the start over. Slow it down, take a beat, figure out, what's going to align with your goals, what's going to allow you to be more present for yourself, for your family, all the things that we've talked about. It all starts with stop. That's
Yes.
sort of a funny thing. It starts with stop. It does. It starts with stop. And that's how you stop that all the cyclical stuff, the anxiety, the self-judgment, all of those things that gravity-wise into a downward spiral.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I visualize it in my mind is because a lot of people, again, stopping is like, "Well, I'm wasting time and and it's like, okay, and also, like, if you don't stop and put, it really doesn't take that much time, 5 minutes of
Mhm.
some into this, like, sometimes not even that much, then
Really,
what's gonna
sometimes
happen?
30 seconds.
Right. Then what's gonna happen? You're gonna feel like you wasted time, and you're gonna be disappointed. All of this stuff, the spiral, the snowball effect that you don't want to happen, all of those things.
Mhm,
So when you
mhm.
stop, it's thinking about, again, for me visually, it's like stopping is not stopping. Ooh, we can bring in perspective here. It's not a negative thing. It's
Right.
a positive, helpful. I'm stopping the negative things from happening. It's
Mhm,
stopping the
mhm,
things that I don't want to happen
mhm.
from happening because I am now putting myself, what I say is like in a position of power, to be all encompassing.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
stopping, which is the last thing that you want to do when you're in it and you're in that heightened stress state, it is the start to some cool shit.
It's true. It's true. Starting awareness is the whole thing that we've been talking about,
Mhm.
you know? The more awareness it's like, this statement, "Knowledge is power." How are you gonna know yourself? You're not gonna know yourself if you don't have that ability to be aware of yourself, and you're not gonna be aware of yourself, even if sometimes you can be, if you don't slow it down
Mhm.
when you're in those heightened stages.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
I love it.
yeah, I mean, stopping is the start of making things better.
Mhm.
And stopping, as you say, doesn't mean arresting, doesn't mean like, ceasing. It means just lowering the temperature,
Adjusting the thermostat.
adjusting the thermostat. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to do this or not, but you want to get personal for a moment?
Sure.
Okay. So you are embarking on something
Mhm.
in your present day with anticipation of things to change
Mhm.
after what, 12 years of marriage with, just you and your spouse and your animals.
Mhm.
Um, Whenever people would ask me, like, do you have any grandchildren yet? And I would say, Meryl and Josh really love their life the way it is. If it happens, it happens. But, they like their life the way it is. And maybe they don't want to really shift it.
Mhm.
And your body is changing.
Mhm.
And you can certainly edit any of this out if you don't want to. But
No,
your
let's just
body,
throw it all out there. Yeah.
your body is changing. Your hormones are changing, your self-awareness is changing, your relationship with your spouse has taken a slightly different coloration in terms of caring and nurturing and whatnot. And you're anticipating this huge intrusion into your life with, all the things that a baby brings. And how are you preparing for that? How are you managing your anticipation about the shift and maybe even the grief about leaving what you've had for more than a decade and moving into another chapter? How are you managing?
Ooh, question. There is not a simple answer here.
Nothing important is simple.
Yeah. And I will say something that I've done a lot of reflection on, which is like that's a big big tool that I've used through it all because there's so many thoughts and so many emotions and so many, so much,
Mhm.
is really being exploratory and getting curious into those thoughts and kind of like completing the picture. So I think about what else could be possible or what else could be true, and that helps to put me out of a spiral, right? Like, that stops all that stuff.
Can I ask a question here? Does that mean you stop catastrophizing?
Yes, I honestly don't think I've catastrophized. I don't think I've gotten to the point of catastrophizing
Okay. But
here.
when you say think about what else could be possible,
Mhm.
from what? What else could be possible from what you're thinking in the present time, and what is that?
So, yeah, so thinking about, okay, like, wow, I'm not gonna have time, or I'm not going to have independence,
Mhm.
or, like any of these things that are threatened. And it's, yes, like that is true in a certain capacity, to use the word differently. And it's not a period dot, the end. So having some perspective in aspects as well, where, let me see if I can come up with specific things. So, my body changing or having difference in how I can train or what my energy levels are, all the things that I could look at in one perspective and be in a really shitty position. Like, these things could have a lot of control and power in my life, and I know for a fact that if I looked at it only in that way, it would affect my behaviors, and it would affect how I felt, and it would affect my mood
Sure,
and everything,
because
like, all of the
you'd be in the mentality of deficiency then.
yes.
Okay.
So, recognizing certain thoughts where it's like, "Hey, I don't necessarily like these aspects of my body changing," and also there's purpose to it, it's temporary. What opportunities are there? Like, how can I use this to cultivate my relationship with my body? And thinking about training, it's like, okay, like, I don't necessarily like these things, and wow, I've been able to have so much more connection with my body, and I've been able to expand my knowledge and understanding in these various areas. I'm a better coach for many reasons because of this. So thinking about, again, perspective where instead of just the ugh, shitty, like this is how it's negatively impacted me, it is how else can I come at that? And there's multiple things that can be present at the same time. But that is also very, it regulates me, and that's something
Perspective,
that
that's perspective.
perspective, yes. And it also, I think, it lends to my capacity as well because it's not taking up so much space, and really leaning into certain aspects in my day-to-day where I care for myself even if I don't necessarily feel like it.
Mhm.
When it comes to nutritions or going for a walk or resting has been a big adjustment I've had to make.
Doing
And
or not doing, right.
right, right. But figuring out those things, that's also something that has greatly helped me build my capacity, or free up space. However, both ways of looking at it. So I lost my train of thought because I feel like my brain just went in seven different directions.
Well, you talked about reflection and how that gives you perspective and how you look at, "How else can I look at this?"
Mhm.
So not catastrophizing, but
Yeah.
certainly looking at some of the perceived negatives and how you can look at them differently.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think I had mentioned something that has really surprised me and that I've been reflecting on a lot is how regulated I've been, and it is how trusting I am in myself and what I'm capable of, where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of change, there's gonna be a lot of disruption, if you want to look at it in that way. And I also have just like this bottom line deep knowing that, it's all going to be okay. And Josh and I are very capable of figuring shit out and working together and navigating challenge, and that we have a lot of proof in our lives of not only being able to do that, but also grow through those experiences. So that's been huge. And just like the experiences that anytime that I've done hard things, all the work that I've been doing, especially in the times when it felt really hard or inconvenient or like I didn't necessarily feel like doing it, all of those times have led to here and how I'm entering into this and
Yeah.
navigating all of this.
And you've heard me say to you, nature has a way. Nature is amazing. And nature is going to be, it is beginning to and will become a huge piece of this capacity. It's just, it's just amazing. Nature is amazing. I mean, it's amazing
Amazing.
what your body is making right now. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the whole experience is going to be guided a lot by all the things you just said, all the growth you've made and the trust you have, and also what nature provides.
Mhm. Yep. So, yeah, there's a lot to and I will say this now to anybody listening is I am pretty cool with getting into it and sharing and being open. I don't necessarily often like share on the surface level, although I've been doing a lot more of that because it's less scary to me every time I do it and it leads to cool shit. And if anybody has questions or things they want to talk about in here, I'm open. So I just want to add that in. So
Yeah,
thank you
you're
for
welcome.
doing that.
You're welcome.
Um, yeah, so this, as always, we're like, we don't know where it's gonna go, and we covered a lot of bases, I think. And yeah, very, very interwoven. And this was definitely not an episode where it was like step one, step two. And
Yeah,
that's just not how this goes. Like that's, if we're gonna put into expectations, talk about expectations.
right, right.
That's
Yeah,
not
I
how this
I
goes.
I love having conversations with you. I love having conversations with people that mosey along or weave along and all of that. But I love having conversations with you that I love having deep conversations, and that's a place of connection. And I love being able to do that with you.
Yeah,
So
me
thank you.
too. So we'll schedule this, I think, as like a regular thing. And
Yeah, maybe. See what the
okay.
people want. The people.
Well,
I think it
you
would
know,
be really I think it would be a really good idea to do um more talking about pregnancy journey. I think some people might really people need that's the thing is humans are built to share.
they
We are programmed to receive. We are programmed to share. Did you get that Hotel
yeah,
California
I
reference?
got
Okay.
it.
You can check out, but you can never leave. I think people are programmed to need to share. And I think pregnancy is an area where a lot of times people share by complaining, but they don't always have the opportunity to really share in more depth. So that might be something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, on that note, I am so open to sharing if you're listening and you have a specific question that you're curious about, me a message on Instagram or send me an email and I'll be happy to put something out into the world that broaches on that, and I will continue to put my experiences out into the world. And I think we will do this on. I'm just gonna say it. We're gonna do this on a more regular basis. So if there's a topic that you would like support in or like to hear some discussion on, whether you're navigating it in your own life, or, maybe you're a coach listening to this and you want some thoughts on how to support your people, then that's also something you can message me or email me about, and we will take it into consideration. So, and if there was anything that came up for you in this episode, share. Again, we love sharing and hearing, and if there's things that we can further support you in, because I think that's another piece in this discussion, and something we talked about throughout it all was having support systems and not
Right.
just going at it alone.
So that there's the other word that we didn't address, but is a topic for another time. And part of the interwoven is isolation.
Hmm. Yeah. Don't suffer is what I
No.
tell people. Don't suffer in isolation. All right, friends. I hope you
All
got
right.
something out of this episode that you can go do cool shit in your life with. And we'll plan a future episode to do
Sounds
together
good.
and call it
Something.
whatever it is.
It
I'll go
wasn't
back.
it wasn't dumping, but it was whatever.
Brain something, something, but
Yeah,
okay.
something,
We'll
something.
figure it out.
Unpacking it. Okay. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.